Right, hello everyone. Welcome to the Studio Raven development blog. This is our second stream. Today there's just three of us, so it's me, Louise. Raven's here. Raven, you say hi. You're supposed to say
Yeah,
hi.
I know. I was sorry. I was just jumping onto sort of like the stream itself to keep an eye on it.
Right, and also Cam's here.
Hi guys.
Yeah, there's the Cam. So,
There's supposed to be a chat box here, right?
this is.
Oh, there it is. Yeah, there we go. Don't mind
Uh,
me. Technology isn't great.
yeah, that's
I'm
really.
the pro.
Right, anyway, just a quick update on the crew. We do have a new member with us who isn't here with us today, but his name is James, and he is our music guy. So we're what?
Are we going to be showing? Like, are we going to show off any of the little ditties that he did for us?
I don't have any of them.
Oh. Okay. Wait. Okay.
I love how you come up with these things now.
Well, I didn't think of this. Like, I probably should have thought of this a couple of hours. You know how my mind
That's
works.
fine. We will post up a couple of his little ditties afterwards, as you put them, little ditties, so people can have a sample. But yeah, so we're excited to have an audio person on. Right. So
Well, we're also going to mention the other guy that we brought on board.
yeah, we also have on board Wes, who is from the Fable forums. He is a writer. He's done a lot of fan fiction to do with the Fables. And so we're excited to have him on board as well. He's a nice creative type.
He's got a good sense of humour.
Yes.
And he's as old as I am, which is awesome because I can geek out about stuff.
Yes. There we go. You're not surrounded by youngins. Are you happy now? So anyway, we've just had our hero reveal week, which seems to have gone down rather well. Well
I can
done.
sleep.
Yeah. Raven can now sleep. I can put the whip down for 5 minutes, so he can rest. So we thought we would go through the characters that we've released this week and just have a little bit of a chat and a run through of them. So if we start off with our first one that we released, which was Asta. She's our Vixen Archer.
This was your character, wasn't
Well, I had Vixen Archer in my head.
it?
I sort of just rambled off a few things. To Raven was like, now, make a picture.
Yeah. Yeah, you were. So Asta is what she's a noble woman.
Yes.
Woman.
Noble woman. It always sounds a bit weird, I don't know why. Noble woman. Anyway, yes. She is a noble woman. So she is used to the finer things.
I do remember as we were going through the early inspiration for her. I think Glory was definitely one of the characters that we latched onto when we were thinking about the basic sort of design for her.
Yeah. She was definitely an influence because that's just Glory just had such a great personality. I absolutely loved it. You know, she was funny, but she wasn't intentionally funny. It was just funny because she was just like, oh, look at you lot, you peasants. So everyone, you know, we would find it funny when she would be like, why are you laughing? I'm being serious, you lot are peasants. Look how you're dressed. I just definitely think that's a nice sort of twist to it. And yeah, I'm not quite sure why I latched on to her being an archer. I think it was just thinking of Fox, you know, they're quite, not springy, but You know, it
Well,
just seemed to go well.
I know. One of the ideas was like because foxes are so sort of like nippy, nimble, and stuff like that, and we thought, well, we want to have a character that's going to be fairly acrobatic, somewhere between like Flair and Glory. So you've got like that Glory sort of upper class, sort of. She comes from a a noble background, and she's got we've sort of built her with a story where she has two sisters that we're still in the process of like developing their characters out, and her father, who's sort of groomed her into being like the next head of state, I guess is one way of putting it.
Yeah, definitely. Which is, I think, is where we were thinking, because she's quite independent, which is what you'd need to be if you're going to be sort of ruling people. But she does like to explore, definitely. She's she's very interested in history, so of the past. So that is definitely something that she enjoys doing in her own time.
Yep. And another influence we had was like obviously Flair for like the more acrobatic aspect, and I think that's probably where the archery came from.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah,
so she's
definitely.
Definitely, we see her as very much a very active character to be playing. Like you're going to be very, very high, very mobile, like moving around the terrain, sort of using it for your advantages and stuff like that.
Yeah, you won't be standing still, sort of thing.
No, she's going to be very squishy.
I love how you put that, squishy. No, so definitely adds to it. We are also looking into their different abilities and expanding on that currently. So there's a lot of things that we can do with them, which I'm quite like ooh about. It's just trying to make sure that we don't have like all the fireworks going off at once, as it were.
Don't.
No. So where did you get the?
So yeah, whoa.
I was just going to say the sort of her style. Where did you get that? Where did the inspiration hit you for that?
I don't know. We were tossing around a lot of sort of very Celtic archer outfits that we had found, and there was definitely some themes going on that really played into it. I saw her where she would want some light armor, some very light armor to keep her nimble, and something I also wanted something kind of flowing, because we weren't, when we were going through the design, we weren't sure how anthropomorphic we wanted the characters to be, so we didn't know whether we wanted them to sort of have like humanized sort of like hairstyles, or whether we were going to have them with tails, or what we were going to do with their legs, whether they were going to be more human or animal. So I was thinking, putting it together, I was thinking that if we didn't have those elements, then we needed something flowing to give the illusion of all of those sort of like flowing bits of hair that would come off of them. And that's sort of what came through with the dress kind of skirt thing. I don't even know what that's called, but I saw a picture of it and I was just like, yes. And then I showed Laura the picture of it and she was like, yes. And so
so we were all like, yes. No,
I think it all kind of fits with her personality as well. Like it's the kind of like the way she stands, the way she's dressed. It makes her look like she's noble compared to some of the other characters. It gives off that sort of, exudes that sort of character from her.
Oh yeah, definitely. You don't look at her and think she's a poor archer.
No. it's more Katniss Everdeen than Robin Hood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. I remember there's a picture that we had very, very early on when we were talking about her being in Fox, where it was a very stylized version of Maid Marian
Oh
from
yes.
Robin Hood, and you instantly fell in love with that.
I may have done a little bit.
And so you're like, we have to have a character like this.
Yeah, she just looked really, really good.
I also love the aspect of her personality where she is a bit more, she's more reserved than Gloria is. She's sort of like more tempered and diplomatic.
Yeah.
Until she's like in combat, and then you said you wanted her to be a bit sort of unhinged, sort of maniacally like enjoying it.
Well, yeah, because when you think about it, she's a noble woman. She's got to keep her composure, all the time, because all eyes are on her. And then she gets into the fray, and that's when she can sort of let loose a bit, and just sort of go a bit wild and a bit mad.
Yeah.
It'll be a very nice sort of comparison to how she's normal to when she's in battle.
So it's going to be interesting, sort of, if we can get the funds together to have like some good voice acting for it. It's going to be interesting seeing that come to life with sort of like general accent that we have in our heads for her.
Oh yeah, definitely, because we need them to sort of be able to have that certain voice that you need, but then also bring across the crazy in combat.
Yeah.
The noble crazy.
So yeah, I think that's going to be cool.
Cool. Anything else you want to say about Asta, or shall we move on?
I think we should move on.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Our next hero
Brerin.
that we revealed was Brerin, who is our little bunny rabbit.
Yeah. As the guys themselves have had issues with remembering how to spell his name and sort of like say it, I think it was. I know when I brought him up initially, Louise was like, "Can I just call him Brian?"
It's one that it does take a little while to get used to saying.
But the name sort of is influenced by the fact that he's from the valleys. He's a very I see him as a very Welsh character.
Yeah, which is fine. It was just because that initial sort of what? Because it's the unknown name.
Yeah. Well, yeah. You got Briar Patches, so Briar.
I think his name is kind of it reflects his character because he's meant to be one of the more like mysterious characters. Like he's a bit of a summoner. He does what he wants. He's nomadic and walks all over the place.
I think the description was
And it
hippie.
fits.
Hippie.
The description was what?
Hippie. Because he is, he's very, he is sort of wandering, a bit more mysterious, but at the same time, it's just he's rather more laid back
Mm.
than most.
But also, he could be almost eccentric. Like to the other
Little bit.
characters, they would be like looking at him and thinking, "Oh, what's this guy doing?"
Well, it's not the picture that I put together for him. Has the little dragon, which I can't remember.
Dowie.
What? Dowie.
Toothless.
Yeah. I know. I was talking to Michael about this the other day, saying, "Well, if we've got the dragon called Dowie, then we have to have his other pets named Huey and Louie." But yeah, he's got his little derpy dragon, which I think is cool. And the two other summons that he's going to get are is a little sort of squirrel thing, I can never pronounce the name of it. It's based on the Norse mythology of that squirrel that runs up and down Yggdrasil.
Oh, right.
Yeah, the little messenger squirrel. And then he's also going to have like this sort of phoenix hawk style bird. And if you guys notice on the little character design, like his stave, which it's the first thing that I drew that I was like, this completely encapsulates his character. Where, like, on one side you've got you got somewhere for the dragon to curl up, you've got another place for the bird to perch, and then you've got another bit where the squirrel is going to be sort of like hanging on to it. So they're going to sort of sit in different places, and sort of like for the actual staves themselves, we will look. I've been sort of doing different horn designs for like the different types of them.
Yeah.
For the progression, but yeah, he's a bit of a wanderer. He's sort of like very laid back and just, you know, a nature lover, as druids are, you know.
He also has that sort of little sort of almost like a little bit of a playful side where he doesn't like to answer questions straight.
Yeah.
You know, he will give different sort of answers to different people just because he can, basically.
When we were going through that aspect of the design, like one of the first things you said was like, oh, the image I've got in my mind is like how Verse, when you're asking about her arm, she's always giving you a different tale for it. I was like, that is so perfect for this guy.
Yeah. it you know, it's a lot to do with his personality. Say, you know, you could ask, one person will ask him his age, he'll say 12. The next person, he'll be like 1,517. You know, it's just to be ridiculous, just because he can. So yeah.
There's not a lot more to say about him. His sort of the backstory that we've been weaving for him sort of revolves an awful lot around one of the other characters. So we'll get to that in a little bit.
Yes. So anything else you want to say, or shall we move?
I think we can move on to
Callum.
Yep.
Callum was the next one released. He is our resident bat.
I kind of wish Mario was in the call for this, because Callum's very much his character. It's the one that he wanted to bring on board. I think it was also the first one that was suggested when we put together lists of heroes.
Yeah, it was very early one.
Yeah.
Along with Asta.
And like one of the key features, which it doesn't come across in the art, unfortunately, but one of the key features of Callum is we picked up on this Irish myth of a sword that goes around bragging about all of the deeds that it did. It's something to do, what was it, the Sadith and Malaysians, something like that. And one of the Malaysians, like this legendary warrior, had this sword that would talk, and it would brag about all of the exploits that they did and the awesomeness. And so we figured it would be really, really cool to have like this very Irish sort of, and we've gone with like a more northern Irish character, sort of like the craggy sort of hills of Northern Ireland.
Yeah.
And have it so that you've got like this dynamic between the sword who's going to have a personality of its own. So there's technically two characters.
Rolled into one, it's a twofer.
But you got the sword who's sort of like he's a bit mouthy. He's like that friend in the bar who always gets you into a fight, and then when it starts, has gone somewhere else.
Yeah.
So he's more mouth and less action, and then you've got Callum, who's a bit of a chancer, sort of like your stereotypical like Irish lad who's
he's got the charm.
Yeah. He comes from a very small village as well. It was one of the things that Mario was particularly insistent upon. Like, it's a sort of small, out of the way, which is most of Ireland, but it's a small, out of the way, like, village where his father. Well, I can't remember exactly if his father was like a tavern owner.
Yeah,
or
owns a tavern.
Yeah. And so, like, his father just wanted him to take over from the family business, and Callum's just like, it's kind of boring around here, and wants to get out there as quickly as possible. And so he's done a bit of grafting, just going around seeing who he can take advantage of in their little port town. And when he comes across the sword, like they have this instant rapport. And this the sword's named Fergus. Fergus, which it's a shortened version of like the full name, but we've not actually decided on what that's going to be yet. We just know it's got to be something sort of big and sort of Middle Eastern. I don't know what more we can actually say about Fergus's backstory itself, because he sort of alludes to something that we're not ready to reveal just yet.
Yeah. So. We'll just sidestep.
Oh, gloss over that.
We'll move on.
I think the talk that we've had over the last couple of weeks about Callum has definitely been somewhere along the lines of Mario wanted a sort of a very quiet, reserved sort of character, which when he became Irish to fit in with the law, we were just like, that's not Irish people. Being as like two of us have quite a fair amount of Irish relatives, we're just like, that's not Irish people. And so like he kind of he evolved to be a bit more of a sort of Aladdin, sort of Captain Jack Sparrow, somewhere in between there. So he's very nice, he's very kind-hearted, but
his actions may not always sort of
seem like
yeah. Heart's in the right place, but yeah. No, he's definitely going to be fun.
I think he's going to be fun. I'm definitely looking forward to like the whole dynamic between Callum and Fergus.
It's a fun thing to explore.
Yeah.
Because there have been times in games where obviously there are almost like relationships with their weapon, as in someone's very close to it, but to have the weapon speak back.
What was it? There was that I forget what the game is called, but there was that game of someone like sent to hell and they got that gun, and the gun talks, and all it does is say sarcastic things all the time, and just like, well, it'd be nice, but like it's a very one-dimensional character, and something we want to make sure is like the characterization and the back and forth between these two, which hopefully, so like when Wes gets his hands on all of this and expands on it, like especially considering Wes's sense of humor, I think they're gonna have a very, very fun and special sort of relationship between the two of them, like very buddy, and I like the way the possibilities for it.
Yeah. So that is Callum. Shall we move on to the next one?
This one's Cameron's baby, isn't it?
Maybe. It may possibly be Alejandro. Yes, who is our show fighter.
Did you want me to take this one?
Well,
Yeah.
he's your baby.
Yeah. Well, yeah, Alejandro's like, he's a Spanish bull. He's sort of more from the continent than the rest of the characters that we have. So he's come from a place where he's very well known. He's like a celebrity in those times, and he can walk down the street and everyone's shouting his name and being like, "Hey!" So having him moving to meet up with all the rest of the characters will kind of play quite well, because like no one's going to know him and he'll be kind of out of his depth. So that was sort of the area I was going for with that. And like the whole design of him is supposed to be sort of like an old showman. Raven, you like drew up the final design. What was the influence of his jacket?
Oh, the jacket. Well, I was
Can't
looking
remember where you
through
got that
a lot of
from.
Yeah, I think I know there's some work up on Patreon where people can see the different like where I had like the basic sort of outline of the character, and then I was like, well, here's half a dozen like jacket styles and sort of like leg styles, and let's see what we can mush together.
Yeah, you pretty much opened a wardrobe and went, "What shall he wear today?"
So there was a lot of different influences from like your normal sort of like Spanish just everyday man all the way up to like a more royal thing, and because he's supposed to be a bit showy, a bit like full of himself and stuff like that, he had to have something that was comfortable, practical, had a bit of attitude,
Yeah.
but then also had all of that sort of like golden and silvery like trim that makes it look like he's worth a bit more than he is.
Yeah, we wanted him to be a bit more flamboyant and self-assured, so he can, like, so his clothes are supposed to represent that.
Yeah.
Hence, like the V-neck top and everything, like the bulging bits around his biceps. I don't know what they're called. Ruffles?
Sorry.
I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know what any of it's called. I just have pictures. So.
He just had pictures and he made other pictures. No, and it also falls into how he does like the opposite sex quite a lot. So
He has himself a smolder, even though I couldn't actually draw that at the time.
He has himself a what?
A smolder.
Oh,
You know from Tangled. I'm going to put out the smolder.
yeah, but you know that links into the celebrity side of him.
Yeah. I was definitely sort of like when he was explained to me, and sort of like I had all of the input coming in from everywhere. I was definitely thinking along the lines of someone a lot like Flynn Rider, or I can't think of them right now.
Antonio Banderas was a name we chucked around a few
Antonio
times.
Banderas was the first thing that was said, like Puss in Boots, Antonio Banderas, like that kind of thing. I was like, all right, and that's exactly why he's got like that little like mustache and swept back hair, and his horns are swept back. It doesn't show very well on the picture, but like they're sort of swept back to go along with his hair, so it looks like they're part of it flicking back.
Because that's how amazing he
Yeah.
is when he does his look. He can just move his horns around. He's just like, yeah, ladies. Which again, with that sort of attitude, it will mesh quite nicely and lead to some fun things with some of the female heroes.
Yeah. We were definitely like the past week we've been discussing about like how he's going to interact with characters like Mildred, like Asta, you know, and sort of he's a bit of a charmer. So
Yes, we've been having a good old chuckle with some of the things we've been coming out with. What about his weapon? Where did you sort of take influence from that?
The weapon was like, well, we know early on we weren't sure what weapon to give him because his very very earliest influence was Sterling. No two ways around that. Like there's parts of Sterling that sort of semi-misogynistic aspects to him that are still part of his character.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to give him a rapier. I didn't want to have him with a sword. We already had Callum, who has his big ass sword. And I was thinking along the lines of like, well, maybe he could be doing something that you wouldn't expect him to do. So like be something more like a dragoon. And then we found out like the Mexicans have this thing called a picador, which is essentially a horse riding guy with a pike or a halberd. So there was a lot of like pictures of halberds and pikes and all of these medieval weapons being tossed around, and I combined a few of the more interesting looking ones and then sort of just tried to flick the ends up to make it look like they were more horn-like in the metalworking.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Also, one other thing we talked about is sort of what kind of showmanship he's doing. So one of the things we thought up was more like an acrobat, which would make him quite an interesting character. He could be jumping around, doing something you wouldn't expect him, like a person that size to be doing.
Yeah.
And then he could tie the acrobatics into his style of fighting,
which sort
wherein
of
using the pole to sort of vault over things and spin around and everything.
Yeah, it definitely fits into the more sort of dragoonish nature, like the MMORPG style of dragoon, not like real dragoons.
Yeah,
But
so
sort
with his being a showman fighter, that's where he sort of got those sort of almost over the top exaggerated moves of being all over the place, because it's all about putting on a show. So yeah, he's fighting his opponent for the crowds.
Yeah.
When it's
I mean,
all
you can use the
choreographed.
pole to. Yeah, you can use the pole for quite a few things, aside from dancing. But like jumping around, being quite outlandish and flamboyant with it, it gives you a lot of space to move around, and him creating his own space is kind of what drives him as well.
I know there was some talk going on around, because like we were talking about how he got across Europe, like how did he pay his way? Like not everywhere is going to have like somewhere where he can do his talents. That's more an Hispania thing, and so there were a lot of ways that it was sort of like thrown back and forth, like the influence of like the pro wrestling sort of like showmanship, the whole fake fighting and whatnot. There's also sort of like he looks quite refined, dapper, and a ladies' man. So there are other potentially wink wink nudge nudge ways.
You're so obsessed.
DLC.
For a woman
Again,
that's got
we're
some
going
spare
to be keeping
change.
the family friendly rating, but there's wink wink nudge nudges.
Yeah. Hey, you gotta have a couple of wink wink nudges.
Should we move on to Mildred?
Yep. Right. Next one that we released was Mildred. She's an interesting flower.
She's sassy.
Was she originally your idea as well, Louise?
Pardon?
Was she originally your idea as well?
No, Mildred wasn't.
I think Mildred was very much a group idea.
Okay.
Very.
Yeah, it was sort of more of a one person said we should have a character that's like this animal, then the next one, so it's sort of we all sort
Got
of
built
mould-
upon.
Yeah, we all sort of threw a little bit here and there into her.
Yeah.
I mean, my own sort of small influence towards this was like, I'd just seen Kung Fu Panda 3, and I was like, she's got to have Mei Mei's personality. She's just got to be that kind of like, look at me, kind of diva-ish kind of character.
Yeah, it again, because that's, you know, it's something fun to work with.
But yeah, she's a bit of a diva. She can. I'm sure we can talk about the NPCs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Alright. So, she's married to the blacksmith in the hub town that you're in, who's a tortoise, which is kind of an interesting dynamic in and of itself. But one of the things we were sort of discussing when we were putting Mildred together was, like, she's got this sort of exuberant, over-the-top personality to her, and thought it would be a really, really cool mirror to have her sort of heavily involved with another one of the characters in the world, and the tortoise being like this very slow, sort of laid back and, you know, masterful kind of craftsman. Having those two together really meshed well for us.
Yeah, it's definitely something that I a lot of the times I said I can just see him there working away, just like, yes, dear. So it almost feeds her sort of like her ego and her diviness, because she can just sort of get what she wants and just be like, because he's just like, yes, dear.
Also, him being sort of a tied down tortoise type personality means that he can act as like an anchor for her as well. So she's not flying around doing her diva stuff all over the place. She's like, I have to stay with him because I'm loyal and everything.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, another thing we talked about early on is she's the only dedicated tank character that we have, and so I didn't want a tank character that was your normal everyday, like, here's a paladin kind of thing. And so when we went about designing the weapon, it was decided very, very early on of just like, she doesn't have any like proper weapons. Like, she doesn't have a sword, she doesn't have a mace, doesn't have a hammer, none of that stuff. Like, all she's got is like this shield. She's more of a sort of protective, wants to keep everyone else safe, rather than, I'm going to go off and hurt something.
Yeah.
And it blends into the diva-ish personality that she has. And so, like, the shield that she has, sort of like, it's come through a couple of iterations, and there's still some work that's going to end up being done to it. But it's a shield that breaks into two parts, so she can sort of like wield them as gauntlets, but she can bring them together as like a sort of protective thing, kind of like a boxer, is how we described it.
Yeah.
And they're also connected by a small, by like an extending chain, so she can sort of crowd clear and stuff like that. It's sort of very much okay, everyone gets back, I'm just going to keep everyone safe kind of weapon. I really like the idea of her being sort of very much a 100% sort of tank-like character.
Well, yeah, then it definitely it gets people communicating and working together.
Yeah,
So
it's one of the things that we were talking about very early on, of just like, well, if we had all of the characters to where they're all going to be very, very, like, they're going to have like their offensive things, kind of like Fable Legends, all of the characters are very, very effective offensively, outside of like maybe I think it was Leech, who his later sort of balance pass made him a bit more offensive from like being a pure healer, because he was a bit too strong as a pure healer. But it's what I loved about him. It's what I didn't like about Celeste.
yeah.
Like, having the characters in a specific role means if you end up a bit more dedicated to that character, then you're going to find a nice play style for yourself that doesn't revolve around you being like the one and almighty person in the team. And I think Mildred's design sort of encapsulates this perfectly, where she's there to ensure everyone else on the team is very, very safe and sort of more protected. So she's going to end up being a lot better with most of the squishier characters.
Yeah.
It ties in quite well with her being maybe slightly older than the other female characters. She could be almost more of a mother to them. Like, she takes it upon herself to be like, I need to protect these guys. It's up to me, sort of thing. And then in combat, that will reflect on the way they can sort of work together as a team, rather than other characters who might want to do better on their own. So it's like Alejandro's running in there doing his own thing, just trying to be the centre of attention.
Yeah, it's definitely gonna complement quite well. Sort of like Alejandro and Callum, who are more sort of gung ho in terms of their combat style. So, there anything else with Mildred?
No, I think we've covered her nicely.
Okay.
Shall we move on to the final one?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Right, the last one we revealed, which was only yesterday, was Hayley. Now, this was your baby, Raven.
Almost exclusively, yeah. Well, okay. So the influence I had for Hayley was I'm a big fan of a certain children's show. And so there's a bit of influence there.
It's Adventure Time.
Yes. Yeah. But Hayley's the youngest character in our roster. She's sort of late teens, so she's like 16 or 18 years old, around that kind of age. She's very much like a sort of more naive and upbeat, sort of energetic character. That hasn't really done much. Sort of like I would say I was thinking a lot more along the lines of like Honey Lemon from like Big Hero 6 and Evian. That kind of just very, very energetic, very, very naive, and sort of a little self-conscious about herself.
Yeah.
The really cool thing about her is she is a were character, like a morphing character. So the village where she comes from, which is going to end up being one of the areas in the game that the players are going to fight over and have some quests with, has an ether wellspring in it, and it's sort of like when they all appeared in the world, it started sort of like living so close to it. It's kind of like having a nuclear plant nearby. Like if nuclear plants did what they did in comic books, it sort of mutated everyone in her village. So all of the horses in her village sort of slowly over a couple of generations mutated into like 3 different types of horses. So you have the Shire horses, which are big, buff, burly, sort of down to earth kind of horses. You've then got like the Pegasus, sort of Slipnir kind of horses. They're sort of very, very quick, nimble, sort of very adventurous kind of horses. And then you've got the unicorn horses, which are very focused around magic and a bit up themselves. And what makes Hayley special is, depending on her mood, she changes into one of these 3 kinds of horses. And that's where she gets a lot of her gets her sort of her powers and her abilities from. Like the players, or the players themselves are going to be able to sort of choose which one they want to sort of play as, and that's going to define her role as like a tank or an offensive or a support or a I can't remember what the 4 roles are now, but like it sort of brings her in. Like her ultimate is like a combination of all 3 of them.
Yeah.
Sort of makes her a bit godlike, but only for a very short time. And yeah, like she's heavily her sort of story. The reason why she's part of this sort of small band of eclectic heroes is the character Brerin. On one of his many wanderings, just sort of stumbled into her village, and she's sort of like, her being this naive little horse comes across like this wise rabbit who just, he's been everywhere, he's sort of done everything, and he's like, but she wants to know about all of that. So you have like this relationship, and I think you described it as like that relationship between Carl and the Boy Scout in Up.
Yeah.
And it's that kind of relationship, and so like she's sort of more attached to his hip as like he's so cool, and he's more like and he's the one who sort of takes her on as a mentor and whatnot. So there's a bit of a relationship going on there, like a father-daughter relationship situation. So yeah, I don't know what else to say.
What about her style?
Huh?
Her style.
The style. I found some outfits that looked kind of sexy. Wes was saying this the other day, like when I put it up, and he was just like, "Is it wrong that I have a friend who finds her quite nice?" I was just like, "A friend, I see." I wasn't meaning to sort of make her as quite curvaceous as I did, but yeah, it's like I wanted something that sort of covered her up, sort of basically from head to toe, was very, very sort of staunchly Celtic in origin, so like very from the boondocks, kind of like middle of nowhere situation, but sort of she's a teenager, so it has to have some style to it. And so yeah,
in some sense she's sort of similar to Brerin in terms of style, because they're from like the same sort of area.
Well, they're not from the same area, but they're from sort of similar kind of villages to begin with. They're sort of like they're not small villages, but they're not like next to centralized like towns or cities or anything like that. They're sort of a bit more rural.
But they're very different to sort of Mildred, Alejandro, where they've come from very built up sort of areas.
Yeah, there's a lot of style there.
Right, excellent. I think that's Hayley wrapped up. Okay, I think the next thing we should discuss is the Patreon.
Yeah.
We've spent a lot of time deciding about the reward system to go with for our patrons. So
many long nights.
yeah, bashing my head against the wall sort of thing, because we wanted, obviously we are giving rewards to our patrons, but trying to decide tiers, what to give, etc. And then we started thinking along the lines of, well, not everyone is gonna want, say for example, a t-shirt, or not everyone's gonna want what's necessarily specified at each tier. We wanted to give them a bit more freedom, and that's when you've come up with your idea, Raven.
Yeah, so what we're going to be doing with the reward system is it's going to be attached to a credit, a Patreon credit system. So over the each month, like depending on the reward tier that you've got, you'll earn X amount of credits. There's a list of them somewhere, but I don't have it to hand. You'll earn X amount of credits, and then you'll be able to sort of like use those in the store when we finally have our website up and running.
We'll get onto that.
We'll get onto that. You'll be able to like spend them on either merchandise, and the other thing is like the Patreon only rewards. So like all of those special things that you'll be able to sort of get in game. You'll be able to pick and choose what you want. So like say, if you want one of the top tier rewards, then someone could come in at like the last month and then sort of splurge and say drop like, I don't know, $50 or $100 or whatever, and get like that top tier reward. But then at the same time, someone who's been sort of a patron for like the last 5 months, like dropping sort of like $10 a month or something like that, they're also going to sort of have the ability to get that top tier reward. And they'll be able to they'll be able to use their credit. So it's sort of like, it's kind of like a sort of premium currency system that will be rewarding to the patrons.
Yeah.
And that'll tie into the exclusive trader that we're going to have in the game just for the patrons, which we're doing something very special with.
Yeah, which I'm excited about.
That's it. We've got to send the rough concept to the guy soon.
Yes.
Get his feedback.
Yes, all will be revealed.
Yeah.
But also another thing that the reason why we're having a bit of, we're delayed with the rewards and the credit system is just we're trying to find the best way to implement it and to keep track of it.
Yeah, Patron's okay for like individual things, but it's not amazing for what we're trying to do, so we're going to have to keep track of a lot of this manually. But yeah, we should be able to get it all worked out and bashed out within the next, like, I'd say month.
Yeah.
We'll have an update in the next live stream, definitely.
Yeah, even if it's just a very basic credit system by then, and then hopefully we can expand on it and just make it less labour intensive.
But I mean, the patron at the moment, whatever anyone can sort of provide is fine. Like even if it's just $1 is perfectly fine. You get complete access to all of the artwork that we put up there, which so far I think we're up to about 30 pieces of artwork, something like that.
It's around that benchmark, because every time we have released a hero this week, what we've done to the public is the finished article. The patrons get to see the process where they've cut, like how that character's been built, and they just get more in that sense.
This VOD as well, like this is going to be up for the patrons for the next couple of days, exclusive for them.
And then it will go live.
Yeah, and then it'll go live
for everyone
else. If you're watching this a couple of days in the future and going, oh, I wish I'd been able to log in for like Sunday, just $1 will get you access to this early.
Yeah, and there will be other things in the future, more towards our patrons, that we've been looking into. Some extra little rewards. So it may not. There'll be some stuff that, regardless of what tier you're on, you can sort of get involved with.
Along the lines of the merchandise, we have been looking at sort of like seeing about getting some t-shirts, like hoodies, beanies, sort of like just general apparel thing that most people expect. Once we've got like each of the heroes like in their final drafts, the ones that we put out right now are sort of like these are the versions that we wanted to generate some interest with. They're not necessarily the final draft, the characters that we're going to be sort of putting into 3D. There's still some work to be done to them.
Oh yeah, they'll be evolving, but everything does.
Yeah, but as soon as we've sort of like locked in and just been like, yes, that is perfect for what we want for them, we're going to be looking into sort of making some beanies of them, like little plushy beanie things for the merchandise store.
Yes,
so you can have your favourite one to hug.
To have forever and to love it. So yeah, so make sure you check it out. Just patreon.com/Studio Raven. Just starting from $1.
Okay.
Right.
The next thing, just like a quick thing before we start, we go with questions, which we run over. We're pretty close to time.
Yeah.
We are looking for a web monkey. Our existing guy who was working on our website, so like he came in early in the project and was like, oh yeah, I can handle like the back end stuff. And then we had like a little conversation with him. He'd said, and like after I had some trouble sort of like putting together something because I was using ASP 6 or something like that. I didn't realize my web host only supported 4.5, and so then we got into like all the design stuff, and I've not had time to sort of do anything else, and no one else on the team's really had much time or knows how to do like the web side of things. So we're looking for someone who can replace the guy who kind of just walked out. He said it'll be 2 or 3 days. That was like 3 weeks ago. Didn't say anything else, and then just like left the team. Not a word to us either, which is kind of upsetting.
So if you like what you've seen so far and want to be involved, that would be great. Just shoot an email to publicrelations@leandri.eu, and we will get back to you as soon as possible.
Because we want it as soon as possible.
Yes, pretty much. we promise we won't just suddenly appear at your house and be like, oh, thank you. But yeah, so
possibly free.
Okay, so yeah, any interest, please email us. Right, we'll move on to the last little bit where we're just going to answer a few questions that have been sent to us. So we've had a few from Francois. The first one,
Our first patron.
Yeah, our first patron, and he's been rather involved and giving ideas and stuff, which is great. First one is, when will you convert the heroes from drawings into animated playable characters?
There's no set schedule for this. It'll probably it'll go through a couple of iterations. So as we're putting the engine together, we have sort of rough outs just for the proportions, getting the animation, stuff like that. So they'll be if you remember Tomb Raider in the early days where it was like 6 or 7 blocks,
yeah,
of just like cubes together. They'll start off like that, and then they'll gradually evolve into like the more finished products as we have the time to work on those. It's probably we're probably not going to be able to get the 3D versions done for the next, I'd say, month and a half, 2 months, something like that. There's a lot of stuff that we have to do in the meantime. We've got the factions that we need to sort of get down pat. There's the friend or foe thing that we'll be announcing soon. So yeah, there's a lot more sort of concepts and stuff like that we need to sort of get out. We've got Mario's been working quite diligently on getting together a lot of the environments, like the looks and the feels of the environments. So
And again, if you're a patron, you would see some of those environments.
yeah.
Shamelessly advertising.
But yeah, I mean they're coming together and they're starting to look. It's starting to get a really good feel for what we're going to be going for. So yeah, I think about 2 months time, 1.5 2 months time, we're going to start fleshing everything out in 3D and start to get it game ready.
Yep. Okay. The next one he asked is, are you planning to give more details of the game on your pages, so Facebook, Patreon, etc.? So we have we have a very basic description at the moment. We will be putting out a slightly more fleshed out one, say on the Facebook, but it will be the Patreon where we have the most details, and we will also be working shortly on just a short video for our patrons, just as a sort of a mini guide to the game.
I mean, it might. I think it'll probably be something that, because we were talking today, like when you told me about the question today, I got a good idea of like putting together maybe a flipbook style animatic, like a I don't know if people have seen them as like bonus features on DVDs of cartoons and stuff like that, where you see the rough sort of like storyboarding.
Yeah,
animation.
They've done, the whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll probably have something along those sorts of lines, like for a nice little stylized, like conceptual, like thing, just showing off how the game will be and stuff like that. It'll be cute.
So keep an eye out for that. And then the last question from Francois was, what are the next steps and what are staff members working on? So, first of all, we are working on something else currently, which will become more clear by Wednesday, where we'll be releasing something. You've, as Raven said, something to do friend or foe. So if you keep an eye out on our Facebook, Twitter, Patreon, all of that, the more we reveal to you, you'll see what we're currently starting to work on. But also with what we, like, each member is working on, because we're a small team, even though we all have our own
areas of expertise.
Yeah, areas of expertise. We all sort of do a little bit of everything because we're such a small team.
Yeah, so we've got me and Louise. I think someone else. I can't remember who else. Was it you, Cam?
Well, I don't know what you're going to say.
Finish your sentence and then Cam can answer.
I think me and Louise are sort of handling programming aspects.
Yeah.
I think someone else on the team said they were okay at programming, but I don't. We'll find out. And then there's again me, Cam, and Mario, who are like doing artwork, like concept stuff and 3D later.
Hey, I drew a house.
Yeah, that's true. Even Louise has done some artwork.
And I'm rubbish.
You should have that up on the Patreon.
Oh yeah, I'll put my house up
Not
for
that
all
bad.
the patrons.
Yeah.
I'll put that up after the stream.
Alright. So yeah, we're all just doing little jobs here and there. I think, like, I know there's a schedule up on the team site that we've got. I haven't read it yet. Probably should. But yeah, we're going through the conceptual stages at the moment of the game. Like we did the last month was getting all of the all of the sort of pre-production stuff out of the way. So sort of like getting the basic framework of what kind of game we wanted, what the general goals were going to be, and stuff like that. And at the moment, this next month to sort of like a month and a half, we're bashing out all of the concepts. So we're fleshing out everything that we've done. We're putting all the artwork together for it, and
Yeah, we're getting some things nailed down.
Yeah.
Because it's very easy to sort of get distracted and be like, oh, what about this? Oh, but what about that? So we're sort of like, nope, come on.
It's another reason why we've got these live casts for every 2 weeks, and so like part of the schedules are we're sort of doing something different from what I've done professionally in the past, where in order to keep the team sort of all involved, because we're not in the same office, we can't just walk into another room and just yell at each other, why haven't you done this? But to keep everyone sort of like involved and sort of on point and sort of all working towards a similar sort of goal, what we're doing is sort of like having these reveal weeks where we're getting public feedback from what we're putting out as we're working on it. So that just keeps us, that keeps the drive up as we're getting all of this nice positive feedback. But it also means that we've got like these 2-week deadlines that we're working to. So yeah, the next thing on the docket is Friend or Foe, which info about that will be coming out, I think, Wednesday.
Yeah, Wednesday is when some more information will be going up across our pages. So keep an eye out for that. Okay, so I think that pretty much wraps it up for us.
Unless there are any questions from the chat.
Nope.
Nope. No, that's fine.
And there's nothing else we need to cover.
No, that's fine. Alright, so don't forget to check out our Facebook, so facebook.com/Leandri Studio Raven, our Twitter @Studio Raven Feed, and if you are kind enough to become a patron for us, go to patreon.com/Studio Raven. We will be back.
And then you bug us on a daily basis.
Pardon?
They can bug us on a daily basis because we read that absolutely every single day.
Yes, we're on that all the time. So, yeah, please, if you want to, that would be grand. And we will be back in